Greetings, information superhighway, and welcome to episode 8 of the Nail the Recruiting Process podcast. My name is Jared Zeidman. I'm really excited to be here for a multitude of reasons. One, we're about halfway through, I guess we'll call it the first season of the podcast, and I'm just thrilled with how things are going, and I'm even more excited about what things are going to look like in the second half after our little halftime break with some great additional guests coming through. I'm also super duper excited about the guests we have today. And finally, I'm just really excited in general about the current state of basketball, which has been on display through an amazing opening 10 days of the Olympics. The 3-on-3 basketball has been outstanding. The 5-on-5 basketball has been outstanding. As I mentioned last week, there's some individuals I'm really pulling for, and the commentary has also been great. But I want to take a moment and call attention to the 3-on-3. If by chance you are listening or watching this podcast and you happen to be in a position of influence over young high school aged athletes or middle school aged athletes, I think that the Olympics are laying out a blueprint for how to teach the game of basketball with 3-on-3 international rules. And I know that there are some organizations that are already trying to bring this movement stateside, and let me just endorse that movement. 3-on-3 basketball, especially for some of the deficiencies in the modern game, to be very specific about that, a lot of high school athletes are ISO-oriented and know how to score because they can attack a mismatch, but they don't necessarily know how to read defense or quote-unquote play the right way. They don't necessarily know how to attack properly off ball screens or read screens away from the ball. And 3-on-3 attacks those deficiencies head on. It is exclusively reading defensive mistakes off of screens, either on the ball or away from the ball. I would say unless a play has broken down, 90% of plays have started with either a down screen or flare screen to get somebody open into a ball screen. And then they are literally just reading one rolls, one rises. We're either passing to our open teammate on the perimeter or hitting the roller, and we are just rinse repeating until the defense breaks down. And no matter how up-tempo a team wants to play in transition at the collegiate level, eventually someone's going to stop you in transition, and you are going to run an offense that starts with an off-ball screen, an on-ball screen, or a cut. And it's going to be up to you, the ball handler, to read the defense. 3-on-3 in a quick, really, really up-tempo setting with fewer defenders, so the likelihood of success is a little bit higher, gives you the opportunity to learn how to make those reads. And I really, really think more people need to be teaching it. If I ever have the opportunity to do it, I know I will be doing it. So if for whatever reason you just listened to the last 2 minutes of me rambling about 3-on-3 basketball and you haven't watched it yet on the Olympics, you must watch it. The finals are taking place as we speak. Watch the replays of them. It's worth it. Sign on to Peacock, watch the replays. Go on YouTube, watch some international 3-on-3 that's taken place in the past couple of years, even before the Olympics. It's worth it, and it's worth it to get younger people into it. Now let's move to our question of the week. This one does not come from an email. I actually did a couple of consult sessions with some new clients, and they went really well, but I was asked the same question by both people. And to give you a little bit of background, both of these recruits are talented recruits that are for sure going to find the correct fit for them. But they're in this process where they're talking to a lot of different coaches at once, and they're having trouble establishing which coach is more interested in them than other coaches. And the question essentially boils down to, how do I know which college programs are sincerely interested in me? Now, I'm going to answer the exact way that I answered them. And I'll preface this by saying that my answer clearly frustrated them a little bit. We're still cool, don't worry. But that's my job to coach, is to challenge you. My answer was, you ask them, point blank. You either go on campus when you do your visit and you ask them where the coach sees you on their big board, or if you don't have that opportunity happening in the near future, You send a text or an email where you say, hey, I'm trying to narrow down my options right now. I'm really interested in your program, and I want to get an idea of where I stand on your recruiting list. Now, I can give you that advice as I near my 38th birthday, and I'm a little bit more comfortable with rejection, especially after working in the coaching profession for 15 years. I've heard no a hell of a lot more than I've heard yes. And I understand some hesitancy from a young person who's not used to hearing no. It's really difficult to put yourself out there like that. But here's the trade-off. If you don't put yourself out there like that, you're allowing one of two potential possibilities. Possibility one, maybe it's a newer or less experienced coach, and they don't know they're supposed to tell that to you, and they just keep recruiting you because they're having the conversation, but they haven't even actually assessed your fit. So that email really gets them going. Or option two, they don't know how serious you are about them, and they're waiting for you to voice it. Because, by the way, once you get to a college campus, communication is significantly more direct. And I've heard some parents, when I've made this point, I've heard them try to deliver a counterpoint to me. It's like, well, they're kids. Don't these coaches have to meet them where they are? And I'm not saying that this is right. I'm just saying that this is the truth. No, they don't. They do not. They're in a buyer's market. They will find someone that will communicate with them directly. So you have to just kind of remove yourself. It's not about you. It's about getting the information you need and taking that necessary step and trusting that learning how to communicate directly now is going to pay tremendous dividends once you arrive on a college campus. Now, the timing of this question is pretty spectacular because over the last few months, I've exchanged a couple messages with a coach I've become a very big fan of through his social media presence. And this is a coach that's very big on fit finding, that is giving great advice on social media to many recruits who are not his. This coach also just happens to be a sensational recruiter with multiple top 25 national recruiting classes to his name. And I'm going to tell you, before we even dive into the interview itself, that at the end of this podcast, this coach said, if you want an eval and if you are struggling to take that initiative with a coach, email me and I'll give you an eval. I don't know very many Division I head coaches that make that offer, but we're going to take him up on it. And I talked to him about it off the air, and he told me he was dead serious. So if you look in the show notes of this podcast, you're going to get this coach's email address, and he is open to breaking down your film. Now, obviously, he's working on the women's sides right now, so he might be able to give you a little bit more direct feedback as a current D1 women's head coach, but he played at both the JUCO and scholarship levels as a player on the men's side and has a lot of competitive experience and could probably guide you there too. So let's just say you're not ready to reach out to a coach with that direct question, right? Well, here's a different coach with a tremendous breadth of experience that's offering an eval service. His only thing, and you'll hear him say it, was, you got to be ready for the feedback either way. My response to you, the player, no excuse for not taking him up on this. Let's talk a little bit more about him before we dive in. Coach Aaron Kallhoff is about to enter his second year as the head coach at Sacramento State women's basketball. For someone who's pretty close to me in age, this dude has been everywhere. And my favorite thing about him personally is that he truly believes that everyone is on their own adventure. He will admit himself that JUCO was the right start for him, but he took his playing career to a higher level and his coaching career to a higher level after starting at the JUCO level in both places. He also says that there are plenty of recruits who might not be ready for college the moment they're 18, but could end up being college superstars down the line. And he encourages people to find the right fit for them, the way that he found the right fit for himself ultimately at Sacramento State. If you have not had your coffee yet this morning, no worries, because between my energy and his energy, we're about to hit you with like 5 Red Bulls over the next 45 minutes. I am so excited about how this interview came out. You are going to hear him talk about so many different components of the recruiting process, but for educational purposes, my why for having him on is so that he can specifically explain to you what he is looking for as he works to build on a Division I program with a history of success. This is a man that has been at the Power 5 level, the JUCO level, the D2 level. Anything he says applies to a standard of success that you will learn is very similar at all of those levels. My guest today is Coach Aaron Kallhoff, and you're in for a good one. Enjoy. Good morning, Coach Kallhoff. How are we feeling? I know it's been a lot of travel recently. We're smack dab in between some live periods. How we doing?
Oh, doing great. Thankful I get to work my team out today, so I'm really excited about that because that's the most important.
It's the grounding component when you're in the recruiting season because you have to balance being futuristic and being present. And I know how awesome those summer workouts are and how exciting that will be for your team. Usually I would ask a coach how their energy levels are, but with you, I don't have to ask. I know that you're an extremely energy forward coach.
Hey, I'm alive. I'm alive. I walk in the gym yesterday after being stuck in the airport and on a flight and being in Mexico for the U17s and all that. And I walk in and I'm about 10 steps from the door and I hear all this hooting and hollering and loud energy. And I'm like, how can you not love that? I walk in there, the kids were excited. They hadn't seen me in 8 days and we got after it. So I'm fortunate. I get a coach. So there's never a day that I'm not going to bring the energy.
I love that. And I kind of want to build right off that, Coach, because I think this is a good opportunity for our listeners to better get to know you. I have never heard a person describe you and not include the word energy in the first sentence. And I know just from learning more about you and from seeing the way you coach that it seems like it's very important for your program to be full of energy givers. So can you just describe to our listeners how important that energy is to you?
Yeah, I just feel like that's what introduces you. Like before you even say a word, it's your energy, your passion. There's nothing that's ever going to be accomplished without energy and passion. The only thing, I used to always think intensity was the most important thing. Consistency is. So if I consistently am going to bring energy every day, because that's what I've kind of vowed and promised to the players that I've recruited and that I've coached. And I always want to just give them the most maximum amount of my energy I possibly can. So they know that I'm fully invested into them, not just as a player, but as a person.
Love that. And I think it feeds into a big ask to players from the coaching side, which is, we know what college is like. Even on those days where you maybe don't have 100% of your tank, can you give 100% of what you have consistently?
100%. I might not do everything right in life. I haven't ever missed a day of not bringing my most max and the most energy I can. And I think a big part of that is I've just had so much that's happened to me personally in my life of tragedy and stuff that I don't take anything for granted. In the coaching aspect, I started from the ground bottom. And that's why I don't ever take a day for granted. That's why I signed a 1-day contract every day. On paper, I have a 6-year contract, but in life, I have a 1-day contract.
I love that. Waking up every morning with a growth mindset. And I actually think this is a really good place for us to start where people could really learn your story. I think a lot of the times someone even listens to a podcast like this, a parent or a recruit, and they're like, well, they don't know it from my perspective. And this is why I think you're so beneficial as a guest. To say you have cut your teeth to get where you are is a phenomenal understatement. And you're also one of the few people I know that did it twice. You cut your teeth playing at multiple levels, undergrad as an athlete, going JUCO, then to D2. Then you did the same thing as a coach, having literal national championship experience at the JUCO level, working all the way up to the Power 5 level, building these incredible recruiting classes, and now having your own program at the Division I level. So I want to kind of touch on all that, Coach, but I want to start with that foundation because I am sure that grind you had to put yourself through, I'm sure a lot of our young listeners can relate to that. So are you comfortable sharing maybe some of your biggest takeaways and learning experiences from that JUCO grind, both as a player and as a coach?
Yeah, I think the most important thing is I got my start. It was a Monday afternoon, just graduated from Bemidji State. I was sitting back in my basement in Nebraska with my family, and I had told that there was this assistant junior college men's job in Kansas, but it had a little bit more other things that you had to do. So I called the guy. It's a Monday. Actually, it was about 4:00, and
Yep.
he goes, "Well," he goes, "It's about 6.5 hours away, Iola, Kansas, called Allen County Community College at the time." And I said, "Hey, I heard you got an assistant men's basketball opening." He goes, "Yeah." He goes, "There's a little bit more to it. Admissions counselor, assistant dorm director. Like, you're going to live on campus. You're going to make I think he said $560 a month living in the dorm, but you get a meal plan." And I said, "I'll be there tomorrow." He goes, "What?" He goes, I'll be there tomorrow if we can go talk. I want this thing." He goes, "Are you sure?" I said, "Yeah." I said, "I'll be there tomorrow." So I pull up, I got my suit on, the only suit I got, it didn't fit. It's hot it was 102 degrees that day. It was in the middle of summer. And I get out of my car and I'm in a dead sweat. And I'm in dead sweat because I don't even know if my car had air conditioning. So like, I get there and I'm like, the only little money I had to get to the thing. And he goes, "You weren't lying." I said, "Nope." I said, I'm here for the job." And he looks, he goes, "That's telling me a lot." And then we walked around campus talking. He goes, "It's yours." So in a matter of 24 hours, I got my first job. I had a mass comm degree. I was applying for advertising jobs and this, and I couldn't get a job. But I knew I wanted to coach. I knew I wanted to. So I got there. We had a great season. Mike Hayes gave me my coaching start, still close with him today. We had some All-Americans. We had success. Well, what happened is I left and went to another junior college in the state with a little bit more resources. Well, Allen County called me that next year saying, "Hey, we got a head women's basketball job." And I'm 27 years old. And I'm like, I've never coached girls. I've never coached women. I've never coached and they're like, well, also, we saw what you did on the men's side as an assistant here and the dedication and investment you put into it. And they go, "We'll make you an assistant AD too." I'm like, I'm 27. So went there, and that's how I got into the women's side. And so like, it only took that one chance. And so I speak every year at the Final Four, and that's all I tell is it only takes one person to believe in you. It only takes one person that just says, "Hey, let's go." Now, it's not that easy for a lot of people. People see the struggle, and some people that might be accredited players might get the job at a Division I right off the bat after their playing career. It's all about relationships. But then there's also that person, the Eric Spoelstras that started in the video room for the Heat, all them, that there's a story. Nobody's journey, no two people's journeys are the same. And so you got to embrace it. And you can't sit here and you sit and compare your journey with somebody else. And that's the same as a player. You can't compete. Well, she's ranked this. Fight and run your own race. Run your own race in the coaching thing. And I'm fortunate. I've got a great AD at Sacramento State. I got a really good team this year, so that's encouraging. And so, the only message I can constantly keep conveying to people is show up and do the work every day, and don't compare yourself to others.
I can't tell you how much I love that message. We'll have to have you on for a second podcast talking about residential life, because I was actually, my first 3 years coaching, I was a volunteer coach while I was a residence director living in a dorm. So we have that, we have that shared experience in common.
It goes even deeper. So I'm a head JUCO coach. My wife's my assistant. She had 2 late-term miscarriages. And so she gets pregnant. And I'm like, I don't want to hire another assistant. I've already went down that route, this and that. So one of my best friends, she's like a sister, Elena Lovato, gets Trinity Valley. It's one of the best JUCOs in the country. And I said, "Hey, Elena, I want to come with you for 1 year." She's like, "You what? Why are you leaving being a JUCO?" "I want to come with you 1 year." Because she's really good. And between the two of us, and then we had Gerald Ewing, I said, "But we got to figure out my wife. Like, she's pregnant." They let her be in a brand new, it's called Cardinal Hall. They let her be the housing director at Cardinal Hall. It's a brand new 3-bedroom. We already had Camden, she was about 5 or 6. Like, we had a setup. They paid her and they paid me to be an assistant, and it was a great setup. We had 0 players from the team before that. When they left, they won the national title. We got 10 new kids. All 10 went D1. 7 of them played pro. One was a first-round draft pick. Probably one of the best junior college teams. It was one of the best of all times. We won the national title, and that's how I went as the top assistant at Arkansas State and got my start. But it was merely, some people might have looked at it as taking a step back.
Yes.
They can't ever take that national title away from us, and they can't take the relationships. I've seen a lot of them players. I stay in touch with them. One of them even lives in Sacramento now, and so that's where it was like people were like, oh, you went. No, I didn't go sideways. We won a national title, and that propelled my career. But it also it can't ever be taken away.
Right.
So that was key. But we lived in the dorms, and at that time I was 30. 32, I had a 4-year-old, this, that. And the best thing is, some of the people that lived in the dorm that weren't women's basketball players,
yep,
they still stay in touch with our family and my wife. And so we're crazy. We've moved 11 times,
yep,
and we've never made a bad move.
I love it. No, I really do so much. And let me also say, there's a quick deviation. I really appreciate you and your openness in sharing some of that tragedy. As you know this from our conversation off air, my wife and I just welcomed our rainbow baby into the world. So this is our first after a couple of miscarriages on her end. And, I love your openness to share, because something that's really important to me about your perspective, and I think it actually kind of segues into our next question, is, you are always, as you go through life, you're going to have triumphs, you're going to have tragedies, but you're only going to be as strong as the people you keep in your corner. You and that adventure you just shared with me, after learning about you, it makes perfect sense to me, because you built a tremendous program, you built lifelong relationships, and you had great people in your corner. Now, flash forward to this time at Sacramento State, and one of your monikers for the team is only need everyone. And I imagine that your experiences led to that one hashtag, but I'd love it if you could share with our listeners how that came about and what that one hashtag really means to you.
It was perfect. So I got the job last year. We struggled a little bit because we just didn't have and it's no knock on anybody that was here, as far as players and stuff, because Mark Campbell went to TCU. He's phenomenal. Right. It just happened to be we're all different a little bit. And so I had some kids that are no longer with us, and then brought in quite a few new bodies and some transfers, some internationals. And we're just building the culture here because we did struggle last year, and we do I know what success looks like, and it looks different to a lot of different people. But I really wanted to put my kind of high energy, get after it kind of kids, and I feel like that. And so we only do need everyone. I don't know I have no clue who my starting five is going to be out of the 15 kids on our campus. I have no I just don't know. So we're only going to be as good as number 15. And because the way I want to play and how hard, and you got injuries and you got things that happen. And I think that's why I use that acronym. But I also use the CLIMB acronym quite a bit, which is collective commitment, learn to lead, invest, mental toughness, and then belief. So I use that. I use them too quite a bit because I want them to constantly have, hey, what's the B? What's the I? Okay. If we're talking one, what does that mean to you? Because they got to truly understand it if I'm gonna sell it and preach it. And so I think that's the key, because the teams that I've seen have the most success, they don't play 12, 13 bodies, but they have that 12th and 13th person really bought in every day in practice, in case something happens. And how you know it is when you have a chance to play them kids that are towards the end, and to see how much the leaders or the starters or your key players get excited. That's when you truly know you have a culture.
Something that I love about what you just shared, because I can also speak to it too. Some of my favorite wins that we've had in game can actually be attributed to the prep, when player 13 and 14 just internalize the scouting report and go, I know what role I have to play for the next 2 practices, and I'm going to get after it, and I'm going to make sure my teammates are ready. And when I hear you share that, one of the things I think about, especially for these younger high school players that maybe, everybody comes to college having been a big fish, right, in some capacity. One of the things I think about a lot is, if you're coming off the bench, that's okay. You could still bring something tremendous to your team every day. It all comes down to your perspective and your belief, right?
True. I've been number 1 on the team, number 2 on the team. I've been 12, 13. I ain't been 15 ever, but I've been 12, 13. And it's embracing your role, embracing it and bringing it every day, because sometimes at 12 and 13, when 3, 4, and 5 aren't doing it, they go, at least I know I got that consistent one over there. At least I know I got that hard work over there. At least I know I got he or she who's showing up every day. And that's the best. Basketball's a long season, so you're gonna need the end of the bench, or you're gonna need the role players, the glue players, the X factors, because it's hard to sustain, throughout that 6-month period.
Absolutely. No, I really appreciate you sharing that. I want to segue into really a recruiting chat, because I've been lucky to have people like you give their 2 cents on the recruiting process, and we've already gotten tremendous feedback from athletes and parents. But to kind of ease our way into that, I want to talk specifically about your situation, because in addition to being the head coach of a Division I program, having universal experience at so many different levels, you're also in a unique family situation where your oldest is now a sought-after recruit playing volleyball. There's a very high probability she's a scholarship athlete, and she's navigating the recruiting process right now. So my question for you, because I think it will set up our listeners for this, is you have this wealth of coaching and recruiting experience. How has that potentially affected the way you are managing your daughter's experience as she becomes a more sought-after volleyball recruit?
So with her, she's going to be a junior, so she's in the 26th class, and in volleyball, they can't start recruiting that age essentially till the June 15th. So we're a little over a month into her recruiting. Obviously, they can reach out to the club coaches and kind of gauge your interest, and there's ways around it. I haven't been on a single call, Zoom, FaceTime, with any of her recruiting calls. Now, I'll talk to them coaches, on my own and this and that, or we'll communicate. And a lot of them I've known, leading up to now. She's prepared because she's obviously been around. She's been around the sports. She's seen it. And it's interesting. One of the first things that she says when she's talking to him is she goes, I want to find a place that I can be all 4 years. And she goes, I know about the transfer portal. Well, college coaches hearing that from a 16-year-old, they're a little surprised, a little caught off guard. Now, she's got work to do. She's on the cusp of being, having an opportunity that obviously is going to be really good. There's a level for everyone, and she already knows that. And so we don't stress, well, are you doing this or are you doing that? She's actually, her and her mom are in Texas right now at an elite camp. They just got back from one on the East Coast. She's all over, and I missed the opportunity because of recruiting during July period to be able to go with her on that. But her and her mom are able to really dive in, and you got to do your research, because if you're going for an assistant, that's great, but assistants come and go a lot of times. Right. Head coaches, you kind of understand what their situation is, whether contract length, if they're going to be a sought after, whatever it is. But I think the key in recruiting is what I said a lot earlier. Don't compare yourself to others. Because don't compare yourself to others. Because if my junior college, when I was playing, was a 4-year school, I'd have never left. Okay. I had just as much playing D2 as I did my year at D1. I've had just as much fun coaching junior college as I have coached Division I. I think everybody's got their own journey, players, coaches, but I think parents sometimes get caught up in, especially in the AAU, it's in club volleyball, whether it be baseball. Well, so-and-so's got this, so-and-so's got that opportunity. Well, my son or daughter is this and that. No, let your son and daughter be them. Okay. Fully invest into them, encourage and support others, but fully invest into them. And don't worry, everything will take care of themselves if they just work and they constantly try to work on their craft. I think a big thing right now is, people look at the rankings, people look at the offers, people look at, my daughter ain't ever going to post an offer. And here's why. I don't see her waiting very long because she's already done her research. She could go walk on at a Power 5 school. She knows what mid-major looks like. She knows what JUCO looks like. She knows what high major looks like. So she doesn't really get phased in, and she's just a little bit more mature than probably a lot of kids her age because of experience. Right. But I've also looked at it as her mom played small level college soccer, college basketball, that she can go wherever she wants. If she says she wants to go to some small school in Zimbabwe, I don't care. Like I'll miss it because I can't see her as much, but like she can choose where she wants to go, and we're going to support it. Now, and I just think that's because too many parents try to live their glory days out in their kids, just so they can tell their friends and their people, well, so and so, she's going to this, she's getting recruited by that. Well, good for her, because guess what? In them 4 or 5 years, probably not going to be a pro. So now, what are they doing? Do they got a good degree, or do they got some? Or have they had to just chase all over the place because you didn't let them do what they wanted to do? You forced them into a situation.
And so much of the long-term effect of that, to another point of yours earlier, is that level of connectedness with people. I love how much you talk about fit. I love how much you talk about finding your people and finding that one place that believes in you. And now I kind of want to turn the tables on you. We're going to talk about talent. We're going to talk about actual execution of athletes in a second. But obviously you have separators as a coach. Something unique to you. I've interviewed a lot of people. I don't always get a chance to interview somebody with a documented history of bringing in top 25 ranked national classes. That's a pretty cool thing that indicates to me that you are able to consistently identify separators. So what specific things are you looking for, talent aside? Because we'll get to talent, Coach. But what specific things are you looking for that, to you, ensure that a kid is going to be a home run once they get to campus?
One of the first things I look at is, do I think the kid's durable and has grit? Because basketball's a long season. Can you sustain it every day showing up? And you can't predict that completely, but you can look and see, do you think that kid takes care of their body? Do you think that kid's into the nutrition, the rest, and the recovery? Is the kid a good teammate? There's a combination of things, and it all goes into the it. Do they have the it factor? That's what the best players do. I've been fortunate to coach over 30 pros, men's and women's, sign top classes and this, but it's a lot of it is I've never, ever limited my recruiting base. I've signed kids from 19 different countries. I got 7 internationals on my team right now. You got to identify. You have got to identify, does the kid have what it takes to be coached by me? At that time, I was an assistant. You got to know your head coach then. Is that a kind of fit? Because I've seen plenty of kids not play well in one system and shine in the other, vice versa. So, as an assistant, I got to know what kind of style and what kind of head coach I got. As the head coach, it's easier for me to recruit because I know me. That kid that she doesn't fit me. Well, or she does, and I don't care who's offered her. I don't care who's recruiting you. If I like you, I calculated the other day, since I've been at Sacramento State and started the recruiting, we'll just say since September, October for this year's team, I've been 17 times I've been their first offer, and I don't care. I don't care what. But now I've also seen where when I start offering a kid, other people follow in. I don't care. I could care less.
It's your journey. Exactly.
Yep, it's a journey. I've seen Power 5s come in. I know I can identify, hey, I bet Power 5s are gonna like that kid because I've been Power 5 for the last 10, 11 years. But I also always know the kind of kid that I'm going to go after for in the Big Sky isn't going to be your typical kid that maybe some of the other teams in our league have. So
Right.
I'm not recruiting against my own league a lot of times. My goal is to constantly go get kids that I feel can help elevate Sacramento State. And they'll elevate, whether it's culture, whether it's the toughness, whether it's the defense side, offense side, because that's when I can bring the collective whole, and that's when you go to that one. You only need everyone. If I'm doing my job, we're going to put that puzzle together.
I love the emphasis on elevating because it will help us tackle one of the biggest misunderstandings in our profession, which is that, and I remember this when I was coaching at the Division III level, I had trouble recruiting young kids because I had to accept as a young Division III coach that the average 14-year-old doesn't roll out of bed and go, I am going to play basketball at a high academic liberal arts college. Like, everyone is convinced, and I hate being so hyperbolic, but I know with your experience that you're with me on this one. Everyone is convinced that they're a D1 hooper until they kind of go through this process and they realize, okay, maybe I'm not. So what I want to know from you is, from an athleticism, from a drive, from a talent perspective, what makes a kid that does elevate your program? Because that's what these D1 coaches, especially D1 coaches building programs, are looking for.
Do they have the ability to win when moments get tough? Do they have and I'm not talking, does that win the game? Are they able to win the moment when the moment gets tough? Like, I look at it like, I think that's the one thing that helped me get through some of the tough times. My dad was killed when I was younger. So I'm always taking advantage of that day. One of my biggest wins as an assistant was when we beat Oklahoma in the Big 12 tournament when I was at TCU. My wife comes walking down the aisle. She's crying. I'm like, we play Baylor tomorrow. Okay. Like, they're really good. Why are you crying? Like, yeah, let's enjoy the win. My sister had just got killed. So, like, there's these moments where you constantly get checked.
Right.
And you just constantly are sitting here. And, like, so I look at them players. I can relate with the kid in the city. I can relate with the kid in the country. I can relate with the kid in different countries.
Right.
Because at some point the relating is going to be able to stories tell journeys. Okay.
Right.
And so I'm going to be more apt to connect with a kid that hasn't had it all, that hasn't had the red carpet laid out. That's me personally. And sometimes that might take a kid that other people maybe not interested. But as I said earlier, I don't care. That kid right there, I've seen them win a lot of games because when the moment got tough, it didn't phase them. And I think with my daughter, that's why she'll always be successful, because there's no moment that's really going to just catch her. And if you look at it, that's why when you look at NFL, NBA, WNBA, some of the best stories are the ones that the kids had to overcome adversity, and it's because the story told the journey.
I love specifically your calling out of moments, because a lot of times what maybe the average listener doesn't realize is, as a coach, I know who my starters are, but I also know who my finishers are. And there's a lot of times where maybe those two people aren't the same subset of people. And I can point to a number of players at every level I've coached and at the professional level where I haven't coached, where there were individuals who did not start games, but they were so even keel and they were so able, regardless of what mistake happened or what the flow of the game was, they were just able to focus on the next thing and doing the next thing right. And those were the perfect people to have in crunch time. Is that, I guess what I'd like to know is, is it important to you to be able to kind of gauge for that as you're bringing people into your program?
Yep. You got the starters and you got the foxhole. The foxhole is key to me. And I have a foxhole in coaching. I have a foxhole in life. My wife's always going to be in my foxhole. As a player, your team, really good teams, is when your foxhole is your better players. But there's always, I turned a Hill College program from 4-26, my first, before I got there, to when I left, we were 28-5. Okay. And on that 28-5 team, we had 2 D1 transfers, Power 5 transfers. They were all Americans. We had a third-team All-American shooter from another JUCO. And we had just an athletic freshman. But our three-man was a valedictorian from West Texas that probably couldn't touch the bottom loop of the net. Couldn't do anything. But guess what she did? At all times, she put the best player, the second best player, the third best player, the seventh best player. She always put them in the right spot.
Right.
She always put them in the right spot. She was in my foxhole because instead of getting on the first player, which I got no problem because I'm always going to check you, I would just say, hey, Kelsey, this ain't how we do things. This ain't the standard. This ain't the culture. And every time, I got you. But when she said, I got you, the trust, the connection was already there. We already had the trust. I knew she got me. And that's why we were able to win and have the most wins in school history. And it was not because it was because of 1, 2, and 3, but it was just as much as Kelsey. And it was because I always knew, I was like, you know what? She's like a coach on the floor. And these girls ain't going to say nothing to her because guess what? She's rebounding their misses. She's guarding the other team's best player. She's doing this and that. And she doesn't even look at the stat. She's the only one on the team that won't look at the stat sheet after the game because she didn't care. She was judging her success. Did we win or did we lose? And we won 28 times. And she's a coach now at a small college. And she always tells me, wasn't that fun? It was 1 year. Wasn't that fun? Hell yeah, it was fun. Like we had fun. We had fun because we had that glue player. You can't have 7, 8 glue players because you got to have people that can get bucket getters. You got to have people that can go get buckets and do this and that. But you better have yourself one Kelsey on your team. If you have yourself one Kelsey on your team, you go home and sleep a lot better.
I'm so happy that you just mentioned glue players because I'll add some of the closest relationships that I have with former players are those quintessential glue players that did not care about their own stats, but were always able to elevate and check the people around them. And I know you actually recently tweeted that one of your favorite things to watch when you're recruiting is someone that kind of shows themselves to be a glue player. So this is, I'm going to dedicate this question to that specific subset of recruit that might not be the most athletic kid, that might not be the most gifted scorer, but always kind of finds themselves in the right spot. Coach, when you are looking for that glue kid, what it specifically is the glue kid doing in the game that you're watching that makes them, quote unquote, the glue kid?
I was the glue kid on any team I've been on.
I love it.
And that's when my teeth are messed up. I wake up every morning with a bad neck, this and that. I look at it like this. What is a glue player? The glue player is the one that's going to dive on the floor. The glue player is going to be the one that's going to help in the huddle when we're struggling. But the glue player is going to do anything and everything they can do on and off the floor to help the team be successful. And a lot of times they don't even, it doesn't show up on the stat sheet. They don't get credit for it. But I like the glue player because I was one, but it's also, I like it because I know you have to have them to be successful. And the one thing I always wanted to, as a player, was when I left, that they could say, man, that was the toughest kid I've ever coached. Not the best player. And people would laugh because I would walk around in strength shoes, the things, and try to, because I don't have the long length. I'm only about 6'2", listen, but I could dunk because I spent every day trying to do and get myself better because I just wanted to be that much closer to being able to be sufficeable in a game.
Right.
And so that's where you got to be, is like, there's no challenge too big for the glue players. There's no responsibility too big for the glue player. And I think glue players, you look at every national championship team or every world championship team, any sport, you can look at, a glue player. You look at, I think one of the most notable glue players of all time is Shane Battier. Why?
What a throwback. I love that.
What's he known for? Taking charges. That's the ultimate unselfish play there possibly is taking a charge. If you look at the great teams in college, you've got teams that are willing to really sacrifice, take charges, and that kind of stuff. So I use that as and then you can go WNBA. Tamika Catchings was a big time scorer, But Tamika Catching was an ultimate glue player because nobody that ever played with Tamika Catching ever said, I don't like playing with her. Oh, I can't play with her. Ever. And now she's on sports broadcasting. She did a bunch of our games when I was at LSU. And this one of the most phenomenal human beings on and off the floor. But she was the ultimate in women's basketball glue player.
Love it. And you have shared so many things that, in my opinion, encapsulate really important messaging that, again, to me, all goes under the same thread, which is you don't have to be the best scorer. You do not have to be the best XYZ statistically. You have to be consistently the most coachable, consistently a hard worker, consistently someone that's open to growing. And I don't think enough young people realize how far that mindset and that motor can actually take you on this journey. So before I get into my final question for you, let me quickly just say to our listeners, you can't call out hypocrisy on this interview. The person that is answering all these questions literally played his way from JUCO to the high level and then coached his way from JUCO to the high level. Everything he's saying right now is the basketball gospel. Now, with that, Coach, I know, especially navigating a recruiting process yourself with your daughter and with your coaching experience at so many different levels, that you have encountered some people at the high school level, be it coaches, be it parents, be it players, that don't really score as high as we'd like them to on the do they get it index. So I want to give you an open forum to dispel any big misunderstanding or any big myth that you think exists right now for people navigating the recruiting process. You can tackle anything that you want, Coach. What would it be?
I think it would be the big factor is that you have to play on a circuit, you have to be ranked, you have to do this, there's a level for everyone. There's a level for everyone. And I think JUCO gets so frowned upon this and that. Nah, all 10 went D1. All 10, and actually a stat I had kind of forgot was 8 of them that started at their D1 at some point.
There you go.
I think that's a thing is that JUCO can't do it, and that you have to be on a certain circuit to do it, or you have to be ranked to do it. No, you got to find the right fit. I understand of all the places I've been from the east to the west that it's probably easier to get recruited out of some states than it is, if you're in a more of a rural state, this, that. So find a fit, be willing to be open to all options, and then ask questions. But I think so many kids are so close-minded because it goes back to their parents are comparing themselves. They're comparing themselves to whether it be teammates or magazines they read, this and that, or people's social media stuff. But because you look at the highlights, I get so many highlights to my email every day and to my social media and this and that, and everybody can look good. Okay? Everybody can look good. But you got to be willing to be there in person and let somebody see you and see them truly how you act. So I don't have a huge, hey, let's dispel this. But I think some of the biggest things is people aren't themselves. And people aren't they're so caught up in the image of things. Be more caught up in your character, because that's what's going to carry you through. Your image is going to change over time. My image has changed from being my platform is way bigger now than it was when I was sitting in that dorm room at Allen County back in 2003.
Right.
But I'm still the same person. I'm still the same person whether I lose by 20, win by 20 in the mirror. And so my image might have changed, but my character never will. And I think so that's another thing that kind of factors into things is a lot of kids and players and parents and coaches aren't who they really are. They're trying to put on this show or this facade of, and there's no sense to do that. So in the recruiting aspect, always just be willing to be vulnerable too. Okay? Because as a coach, I have to take no. Well, with the transfer portal, I don't mind taking no sometimes because more than likely I'm going to get yes on the next time around. I'll be a fallback. Okay? Or there's a coaching change. Hey, can I come now? So you got to be willing to be able to take no as a player in your recruiting process. My daughter's taking no, and you got to be willing to take no as a coach. But you also got to be willing to take no as a parent. You got to let go of your ego. You got to let go of your ego. And I think that's the other thing is all these parents want their kid, to have this image and this persona and stuff. Do they want to have it for their kid because that's what's best for them, or do they want to have it for their ego? So I kind of just elaborate a little bit on some of the things that I think over time, watching it. A lot of coaches say, hey, I watch their parents and see how they act on the bench. I do, but really I don't, because if I'm from far enough and it's not a local kid, I'm going to be like their I'm going to be their main, not judger, but like evaluator and critiquer when they get here, because kids can change. There are some habits you can break. There's some you can't.
Right. I cannot tell you how much I appreciate your insight, because there are so many things to your lens that your unique journey sort of informs. And I want to close it by restating something that you said that I loved, because the moment we hang up this call, I can trust that you are going to live out your one-day contract. And especially at the time that this is going to be airing, there are going to be kids all over the country going on visits, talking to coaches, sharing film for the first time. And I just want to remind them, especially with everything you just heard, you're only as good as the next thing you do. So keep honoring that contract for yourself. Coach, I'm so excited to see what you and your new look team brings this year, and definitely got a fan in me. I look forward to staying in touch, and thank you again so much for your time.
Hey, I appreciate it. And one last thing is anybody watching this, feel free to obviously look us up on the website. And if you're a recruit, you're a parent, this and that, I'm all like, there's a place for everyone. You can send me the footage and I'll let you know and evaluate you and tell you where I think you stand. And you just got to be willing to accept the feedback.
Love it. And you will not every coach is willing to do that. And I don't want to flood your inbox, but I also know what a D1 inbox looks like. This is a well-connected coach, and I think he's willing to help you out. Coach Aaron Kallhoff, thank you so much again for your time. Be well, my friend.
Stingers up. Let's go.
That's going to do it for another episode of the Nail the Recruiting Process podcast. Thanks again for tuning in. I hope you got something out of today's podcast. If you'd like to learn more about anything related to Nail the Recruiting Process, the book, my work, maybe wanting to work with me one-on-one, anything under the sun, you're going to visit www.nailtherecruitingprocess.com. If you'd like to follow me on social media, you can follow me at Nail the Recruiting Process on Instagram, or at Jared the Coach on Twitter and TikTok. Both of those handles are just one word, no characters, no spaces. If you'd like to ask something of me directly, if you'd like a question that maybe you want answered on a future podcast, or if you have an idea for something we should talk about in a future episode, please reach out to me via email. I would love to hear from you. My email address is recruitinggear@gmail.com. That's the word recruiting, then the word gear combined. recruitinggear@gmail.com. Thanks again for listening, and we hope to catch you next time.